Welcome to the Thresholds of Reality, the podcast where we explore unexplained, mysterious events, phenomena, and legends. Today we're joined by Chris McKinnell. The CEO of the Warren Legacy Foundation. And today he's going to talk to us about all kinds of paranormal activities that he's been a witness to throughout his life. So strap in as we explore the edges of the unknown. All right, Chris, thank you so much for joining us today, all the way from South America. I really appreciate you making the time, and Kyle appreciates it too. Kyle just woke up like 10 minutes ago.
Well, thank you both very much for having me on. It's an honor, gentlemen.
Well, it is our honor because you come from a very well-known family in the realm of paranormal investigation. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm the grandson of Ed and Lorraine Warren from The Conjuring and Annabelle and Nun movies and all of that stuff. I started working with them back in 1980, and I have been doing this my entire life, investigating the paranormal and helping people all around the world. That's what I do with the Warren Legacy Foundation. We've got over 100 amazing people all over the world, and they are out there to help everyone. And we do everything we do for free and anonymously.
Fantastic. How old were you in 1980 when you started working?
16 years old. My grandfather took me on my first case. I mean, I'd already been out with them when I was 14. On lecture tours, I saw my grandmother using her psychic abilities, which honestly blew my mind because, it was the first time I'd ever seen her really show her stuff. And we were with I can't honestly remember, I think it was PM Magazine or Inside Edition. And they had brought us to this haunted house in Ohio. We knew nothing about it. It was a blind test, basically. And we went with a local reporter, and we weren't even allowed to go in. And my grandmother stood outside that house, and she described everything that was going on. This apparition of a big fat man with a bloody apron, the smell of rotting flesh coming out from underneath the sink. There was so many details. Now, I'm a psychic. And I do not trust psychics without evidence. I don't trust me without verification. And luckily, the local reporter was right there with his notes that he had been preparing for a news story. And he's showing me, and I'm looking at all these things that she's rattling off. Give me just one quick moment.
Yeah, sure.
I was going to ask him, did he ever try to pull a fast one on his grandma? And she's like,
sorry, the cat wanted to go out, so I had to open the window.
Go ahead,
I was just saying when he got up, I was like, did you ever try to pull a fast one on grandma? And she's like,
no. And let me tell you, this is actually interesting. Psychics cannot read their loved ones. They cannot, if they're emotionally invested, then their emotions get in the way of the reading. We are much, much better if we know nothing, if we have no emotional investment. My grandmother couldn't read any of us. Thank you, God.
Yeah. Okay. So that brings up a great question, which is, you said that it blew your mind to see grandma in action. Was there kind of a very mundane experience with her before that, and then she just did not bring work home? Is that why there wasn't?
Oh yeah. Growing up, I was when I was a small child, about 3 years old, I was locked in the museum, their haunted museum, at night. I wasn't there long, but it was long enough to scare the crap out of me. And I was afraid of the dark ever after. And they wanted to keep me away from it until I was of age. 14 was of age for them. I was lucky on that particular lecture tour. I also met one of the 3 exorcists that worked on the actual case that the movie The Exorcist was based on. In that true case, which was a little boy, none of the exorcists died. Everything did turn out fine, but it still was an amazing honor to have met the gentleman.
Yeah, they have to spice it up to sell tickets.
Yeah, please. That brings up something. Don't believe all of the Conjuring movies are based on real cases. Annabelle is a real doll, but those movies are fantasies. Don't believe them. Please don't think that when you watch those, you're really learning much about my grandparents.
Fair enough.
I figured it's just like a meat and potatoes thing, isn't it? They're just kind of taking meat and potatoes of it, then they're building something around it, or is it?
Yeah,
more...
I mean, for instance, the Nun doesn't exist at all. That was a fabrication of James Wan. He needed a monster to connect the Amityville case and the Enfield case, and it was added in post-production. He didn't know what they were going to use. They just knew it was going to be a monster. And it was so popular that they started making more Nun movies. I guess there's another one coming out now?
Yeah. Nun 2.
Okay.
The Nunnery.
None more.
Yeah. Actually, there is one thing that's true in the Nun movies, in the first one, and that's in the credits at the end, where you see there's a character in the movie known as Frenchie, and his real name was Maurice Theriault. And that was actually one of my cases with my grandparents when I was young. I was still I was 20 years old. I was in college. And I went with my grandparents on that first day that we met him. He was coming under possession. Things were appearing and disappearing in the house. He was bleeding from the eyes and drooling blood. His father had been this horrible, horrible individual who had actually called him one day and said, "Maurice, I just want you to know that I love you." And then while Maurice was still listening on the phone, his father put the phone down, went in the next room, picked up his gun, killed Maurice's mother, and then killed himself.
Yeah.
Yikes.
So my grandfather thought that perhaps it was his father that was the problem. So we went to the grave site so that Maurice could forgive his father and tell him that he loved him. And while Maurice was talking to his dad and he's crying and he's telling him he loves him, we all watched and heard Maurice get punched so hard under the chin that it lifted him off the ground and shot him back about 3 yards or more, flat on his back.
Oh my gosh.
I was staying in the house with him and his wife and my partner at the time, Ray Jefferson. And he was a farmer, illiterate, French-speaking farmer. We were in the greenhouse one afternoon, and it was still early spring, so it was kind of chilly. And Maurice was saying he felt cold. So I said, "Well, go on over to the heater," because there was a heater in there. And all of a sudden, Ray is saying to me, "Hey, Chris, look at him." And I look, and Maurice is just staring at us with these slitted eyes. And oh, okay. I asked Ray to take his wife, Nancy, back to the house. And I advanced on him saying, "By the power of Jesus Christ, I command you to be gone," making the sign of the cross in front of me again and again. And if you don't say that with conviction, faith, and power, truly believing in what you're saying, it doesn't work. But my grandfather taught me this. And he came out, but he said, "There's something wrong with my back." Now, in the past, words would be etched into his back in French, and nobody else in the family could speak French. So they would read the words to him, and then he would translate it. But this time, when I lifted up his shirt, he had a white T-shirt on, and you could see 3 bloody crosses through his t-shirt, soaked through his t-shirt. The weird thing is when you lifted up his t-shirt, there was blood on his back, but there were no cuts. So I had said, all right, listen, I need that t-shirt. I need to take it to the University of Connecticut, which is where I was going to school, and have it tested. So we walked back to the house. He took off his shirt, took off his t-shirt. He handed it to me. There's no blood on it.
No way.
Yeah. It's still blood on his back, but the blood had disappeared from the t-shirt.
What were you going to test? You're going to test the blood itself? You were testing, what was the...
Yeah, I wanted to know, was this human blood? You know, I don't recall whether or not we had the ability to say it was his blood or not at that point in history, because it was 1984.
Yeah.
But we would have been able to tell if it was human blood or something else. So I wanted to know. I had already gone to the university on another occasion from my first case when the woman had been downstairs in the basement, and she'd been doing the laundry, and she felt this sharp 2 pains in her scalp. And she pulled what looked like were 2 claws out of her head. And I said, well, may I take them to the University of Connecticut, to the zoology department? I want to find out what these are. And the report came back. They were not claws at all. They were actually the first premolar of a 1 to 2 year old domesticated pig that had been broken in half. And it was the roots of the tooth that looked like claws that had been shoved into her head.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. So I had some experience working with them. But when we did the exorcism, which you see it in the credits from the first Nun movie, I was there with my grandfather and grandmother. We had just cleared out a poltergeist house in Tewksbury, Massachusetts, the same day with Bishop McKinnell. And my grandfather was complaining that he didn't feel well. It turned out he was actually having a heart attack in this exorcism. I'll never forget my grandmother saying, well, Ed, why don't you have a banana? You're probably low on potassium. See what I mean? My grandmother couldn't see what was right in front of her because she loved him so much. But I was the man standing between Bishop McKenna and Maurice during the exorcism. Maurice, you know, at first he's grabbing his belly and he's rocking and he's in so much pain. And then all of a sudden he does this dead stare. His eyes slit and he's drooling blood. And he starts to have tears of blood again. And the thing is, now this is interesting to me. The video shows this scaly appearance coming on his cheeks and his forehead cracking open. And yet none of us saw that. It wasn't there. Now, I had this same film examined by a videographer in Costa Rica a few years ago, and he said up until 4 years prior, that technology to change old video like that didn't exist. So we were looking at a psychic manifestation caught on tape.
So you guys didn't physically see it. So when you went back to watch it, you were like, whoa, look, you see what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. So the exorcism worked. But unfortunately, at this time, we didn't quite understand things as well as we do now. You know, this is an ongoing field of study. And I was studying psychology, but I even didn't understand how truly disturbed Maurice was, how hurt he was, that he was suffering from PTSD. And so we didn't get him the psychological help that he truly needed. See, there's always an underlying reason a person is vulnerable to the paranormal. And if they're in a negative mindset, then their manifestation of the paranormal will be negative, not positive. It's also culturally based, which we can happily get into afterward. But a couple of years later, Maurice started coming under possession again. Nancy was not having any more of it. And she got a court order to get him out. He waited, and then one night she was coming home from work. As she was getting out of the car, he used his shotgun and he blew her arm off, dragged her in bleeding into the kitchen and sat her at the table. And she was sure she was going to die like his mother had died. And at the last second, while Maurice had that dead stare again, he just turned the shotgun on himself and blew his head off.
Wow.
This is not something amateurs should be dealing with. This isn't a game. You're dealing with real people's lives. And we take it extraordinarily serious.
Absolutely. And absolutely should.
Do you find a lot of possessions that happen again and again to the same people once you've done something about it?
If they don't get the real help they need, but I want to make something really clear here. Possession is incredibly rare.
Yeah.
Incredibly rare. I can't stand the word demon or devil. I have seen, as I mentioned a few moments ago, that these things are culturally and spiritually based on your spiritual beliefs and your cultural beliefs. The manifestations are, for instance, if you're Hindu, it's going to be Hindu. If you're Buddhist, it's Buddhist. If you're Muslim, it's a jinn or something of that nature. It won't be the Christian type of demon. I don't believe in demons. I believe in egregores or tulpas or self-manifested thought forms. These are things that can become spirits, that can take on a life of their own, and your fear and your terror can make them grow and become incredibly deadly. But they are not the Christian devil, Satan, Beelzebub, Baal, or what have you.
Makes sense.
So you had this just absolutely terrifying experience that happened to Frenchie, and you said you were about 20 when you met Frenchie, and how long did his case last?
There's a great book. It was called Satan's Harvest. If you get a hold of the very first edition, I'm in it. But then I realized how little I enjoyed notoriety and publicity. I'd been on the talk show circuit early on, and I didn't like it. I'm only doing this now because to be effective, now that my grandparents are gone, I've got to come forward, especially for the foundation, because we have so many members around the world. But I'm guessing because I can't recall. I know it started before we got there, a few months before we got there. And I'm guessing we were probably there for 4 months. So
4 months.
Maybe 7? I'm not sure.
So it acted fairly quickly to bring about his demise, unfortunately.
Wow. Oh, no. The demise was 2 or 3 years later.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, no, the first exorcism worked, but because he didn't get the help he needed, it was a couple of years later that he slid back and got dark again and started coming under possession again.
Wow. So after you had your own set of cases, about when did you decide that you were going to take your history of paranormal research and convert that into the Warren Legacy Foundation?
Right after the first movie. My grandmother and I were talking, and I said, Grandma, look, we're just getting so many requests from around the world. I've done the Peace Corps and been in Thailand and Nepal, studied with the Dalai Lama, lived in Jerusalem, all sorts of places, studying. And I said, I've worked with volunteers. I really think we need to expand. We need to go international. And people don't know what the New England Society for Psychic Research is, but they know your name. I want to keep your work alive. I want to keep your name alive. And I want to create the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research. And she loved the idea and gave me her blessing, and we started it together.
And what's the mission? What's your mission?
We have 4 main goals, 5 today, actually. Our number one priority is always our clients. We're there to help them. Nothing comes before that. That's it. Our second one is to educate the public so that perhaps they'll understand that those footsteps they're hearing at night are not the devil. They're probably your grandmother come to check on you, or they're the old man that lived in the house for 35 years and he just doesn't want to leave. And it's your fear that's taking that experience and turning it into something negative. So we try to educate people about things like that. And then our third goal, sadly, this profession, and I hesitate to call it that, but this field of research is populated by cowboys who just want to get their 2-second video of something. They're willing to confront and stir things up, and they leave their families in the homes in a far worse shape than when they arrived. So we're there to educate the next generation of researchers, to instill in them our code of ethics. We also have, my grandmother used to teach people, teach psychics how to deal with their abilities, whether it was to help suppress those abilities or enhance those abilities, how to protect themselves, how to deal with anxiety and panic attacks, that kind of thing. And we carry that on with online support groups, both in English and in Spanish. We currently have over 1,000 members around the world that we help. I am a therapist and a teacher by trade, and I thought I would take that and see what I could do to help these poor people who often are dealing with anxiety attacks and panic disorders, and just helping them to get better.
Yeah. Like Mojo said, he said that's like Zach Baggins. The man just goes into a house, pisses off the spirits, gets his footage, and leaves.
Yeah, we've had plenty of cases where the families afterward get a hold of us because he is an entertainer. He's P.T. Barnum for the paranormal set, and he is unethical. He is unrealistic. If you did half of the crap that I've seen on, and I've only watched 2 of those programs in my life, but if you did half the crap that I've seen on those shows, you'd get yourself killed. So no, I forget it.
Do you find it often that you're having to go back and clean up people's messes?
Yes. And that's another thing. In the foundation, we never use the word demon, ever. It's a loaded word. You go in there and you tell a family, oh, you're dealing with a demon.
Oh, I'm sure it's chaos.
It's terrified.
Yeah.
And it just makes it so much worse. Our job is to minimize the fear first and foremost, so that they're not escalating the problem and feeding that negative energy. We want to have them infuse positive energy into the home. We want them to listen to happy music and watch comedies and stop fighting. If they need psychological help, if they need drug addiction help, whatever it is they need, let's get that as well. We deal with everything holistically. But you mentioned my goals, and I do have one more. And this has been a dream of mine. I think I'm close to being able to do it. And that's to create a spiritual retreat and paranormal education center in Jardín de Antioquia in Colombia. This would be open to everyone in the world. Yeah, half of our classes will be on the paranormal, helping people to understand it and how to work with it or deal with it and help others. But also it'll be about how to take control of your own life, how to empower yourself, how to help yourself and others. So I'm looking to counteract fear. I think fear is the real enemy in the world, and I want to help people to overcome that, because I've seen the power of fear when it takes control. Not just in homes. Look at our government and our politics right now all around the world. But in a poltergeist home, you can see how it escalates when somebody panics and starts getting really upset. And if you take away the fear, imagine what we can do with that same power.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you about the nature of the threats that you deal with. So you mentioned that it's important for you to dispel fear and to help people understand that oftentimes the entities they encounter are benign. And that's to me, it's like, oh, well, if you come across a dog or a cat in the street, that's about the level of threat that you're facing. But
most of the time, what's dealing with the human spirits and how many people do you pass on the street every day that you're not afraid of?
Sure. What I'm getting at is every so often we hear about an animal encounter that does not go well, that someone is injured, and someone has their life impacted in a tremendous way. How do you help people to differentiate, if you can? I don't know if that's even something that's possible, but how do you help people differentiate between a dog or a cat level encounter versus a lion or tiger level encounter?
Well, half of our job is actually diagnosis, truly understanding what they're dealing with. I make sure that we are looking at the actual results of what's happening. In other words, okay, coffee cup flew across the room. Did it hit you? No? All right, maybe it's somebody just trying to get your attention. What else has been going on? Let's talk about it. Let's figure this out. Because often people will jump to the conclusion that, my keys have gone missing and I've looked 10 times on the table and they weren't there. And then all of a sudden they're back on the table. Yeah, chances are that's somebody trying to get your attention. Don't get me wrong. We do deal with a lot of negative cases. But even then, it's often out of control psychics whose abilities are not being controlled by them. They don't understand what they're manifesting. Or, for instance, they'll come to me and they'll say, I've moved 5 times trying to get away from these spirits and they keep following me. It's like, actually what it turns out to be 9 times out of 10 is you're a wide open medium. You see the spirits, they're attracted to you because your aura is burning more brightly than an ordinary person's, and you're a light in the darkness for these lost souls. And you're just attracting them. So we help them to deal with that and learn how to deal with their abilities so that they're not overwhelmed and terrified.
I mean, that has to actually be a really good thing for a lot of people because that can be a scary environment to be in because, there's nothing you can do about it. You feel alone. You tell people they think you're crazy, and no matter what you've tried to please, I'm asking you nicely, spirits, please don't bother me, but that doesn't seem to help. Because because you're always told, oh, there's just these rules that they have to live by. If you tell them to leave, they just automatically leave, and it doesn't seem like that's truly the case all the time. And
well, then I have to ask you a question there. Do you believe in what you're doing? Because if you don't, it doesn't work. Everything is faith-based. And by faith, I mean faith in what you're doing. And it doesn't matter if you're a Buddhist or a Muslim or a Christian or what have you. It's a matter of using some form of ritual to focus your belief and your intention into a clear and concise outcome. I have seen in every religion I've studied, even in really strange religions like Umbanda or Kimbanda, they put up psychic guidelines. And if you don't, you're right, a spirit will get out of control and you won't be able to control it. So if you don't believe in it, if you don't believe that what you're going to do is going to work, then it's not going to work.
Now, do you find it harder with people that have where these things happen and they have real no faith or religion, or they don't really believe in it? Does that make it harder because now you don't have, but so do you know what I'm getting at?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do. And I can empathize, actually. I'm a pastor without any religion. I spent over 50 years of my life studying every religion I could, trying to find faith. And it wasn't until I realized that NASA had said that there are more living worlds in the universe than there are grains of sand on our Earth, which means there are trillions upon trillions of living worlds out there. And my mind is supposed to understand the mind of the creator of all of that. I'm supposed to understand my purpose. I'm just one thread in an infinite tapestry. I have to have faith that what I'm doing is right. And I believe that there are many paths to God. If you're sincere, if you are empathetic of others, there's one basic rule in every religion: do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or as you do unto the least of my brothers, so you do unto me. As long as you got that one down, it doesn't matter if you go to church. It doesn't matter if you have a religion. It's a matter of faith. So
I take that as the rule of don't be a dick.
I'm sorry?
I said I take that as the rule of just don't be a dick.
Yeah.
That's it's
don't
pretty...
be a pious fake in church, going to church every single day and then ignoring the beggar on the street.
Yeah.
Give him your coat, give him something to eat, and help him find his way.
Yeah.
Is that kind of how you view your mission on the War and Legacy Foundation, is kind of the Good Samaritan of the spirit world?
Not just spirit world. 90% of our cases have nothing to do with the paranormal, because people come to us thinking it's paranormal, and it turns out not really. But we'll help you. I think of us as paranormal social workers. We'll get you the resources and the help you need, regardless of whatever that may actually be. That's why half of our job is diagnosis. That's why we have doctors and psychologists and everybody else working for the foundation.
Yeah, because I'm sure it's a lot of steps before it gets to possession or infiltration, or there's a lot of stuff that I'm sure you have to eliminate and go through before you get all the way to the top.
The natural before the supernatural. Always. Don't jump to conclusions. I've noticed even when it's something that seems negative, like for instance, we had a case. A woman had an adult autistic son, a son on the spectrum, and they didn't really get along that well. And when he was a teenager, there was tons of poltergeist phenomena in the house. I've done a study, and I found that it's amazing how many people on the spectrum are actually powerful psychics as well. I think that they are probably the next step in our evolution. But they don't often have great control. And whenever he would get upset with his mother, things would start to fly around. And then as an adult, he went on, he got married, he had kids of his own, but every time he would come visit his mom, even before he got there, things would start to fly around the house. I was like, that's why.
That build up tension and nervousness tension. And
exactly.
So you're telling me that it's telekinesis?
Yeah.
Okay.
I worked that case I mentioned earlier in Tewksbury, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And a lot happened in that one. It's on public record because the poor woman had called the police before they had called us, and the police had put it down in the police blotter. Woman calls about haunted house. It got in the newspaper. And when I arrived there were 200 or 300 cars in the neighborhood. It was ridiculous. This is why we keep everything anonymous. But we did a great job, got rid of what was in there with Bishop McKenna, did a complete cleansing. And for 2 years, no problem. And I always stayed close with that family. They invited us back and asked us to spend the night. They hadn't had any activity for 2 years. But being the gentleman that myself and my cousin were, we kicked the 10-year-old boy out of his bed and got the sleeping bags out, and we were in those. And on his bed. The boy was not happy about this, of course. And he hooked into that energy. And my cousin started yelling at me that I'm kicking the bed. I'm like, I'm not kicking the bed. And we turn off the light again. He's like, Chris, stop kicking the bed. Bed picks up, flies across the room, smashes down, breaks into pieces. I start laughing my ass off because I thought, oh my God, that's the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. My cousin ran down the stairs, and the woman of the house is sitting there having a cigarette and having a cup of coffee at the kitchen table. She turns around, she looks at me, and she says, "So, you believe me now?" But that was an example of telekinesis, because nothing ever happened again after that. He was just hooking into the energy that was still there, and he subconsciously manifested that event.
Was that before or after Rocky V came out?
Oh God, I don't know.
That was the main theme of Rocky V. Is Rocky's kid is like, "That's what you get for taking my room."
I remember Rocky IV very well, and I love that one. I don't remember Rocky V.
Most of us try to forget it. We do try. Well, that's okay. So you've been traveling all around the world. You've got Warren Legacy Foundation set up worldwide, and you've mentioned before that all of these things are very cultural in their manifestations.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you address the cultural differences from one place to the next?
That's why it's so important for me to, when I'm traveling, to recruit people in those new countries. I'm looking for good quality people who understand their own culture and can help me when these manifestations take place. I was down in New Zealand, and there was this lovely woman who worked in a Maori museum, and she educated me. It was an amazing interview, actually. I really enjoyed talking to her for a couple of hours. She really educated me on how the objects of the Maori took on a life of their own and were imbued with the spirit of their owners. And they had to be honored and they had to be taken care of, or those manifestations from those spirits attached would start to cause trouble. And you didn't use like holy water on them. That would be an insult. You used respect, you used honor, and you addressed the spirit by their cultural needs. And I have found that usually is adequate. Down here in South America, listen, I'll be honest, I hate black magic. I hate magic in general. I hate the term. It's offensive to me because I'm more into quantum physics and rational thought. So the only way I can justify it is by thinking of it on a quantum physical level. I just can't wrap my head around it. But it's a big thing here. And people can use it and they can direct it to hurt others. And it happens all the time.
I mean, isn't that black magic can be almost in the realm of harnessing it by the negative energy, and and that's how it helps bring them along, because they believe, because it's it comes about with it. Is that kind of how it goes with that? Or is it just kind of?
Well, it works for both good and evil. I mean, there was a study about 25 years ago, I believe it was in Germany, and they took about 10,000 heart patients, cardiac patients. They didn't tell the doctors what they were doing. They didn't tell the patients what they were doing, but they split the patients in half, 50-50, And half of them they put on prayer lists all around the world, and the other half they didn't. And then they charted the progress of those two groups. And the people who were being prayed over had a far higher survival rate, had a far quicker recuperation rate. There is something to be said for people en masse directing their energy toward a goal.
That's fascinating. I have heard a lot of mixed results or inconclusive results from those types of prayer studies.
The thing is, for all the people that are going to be praying for good, there's a lot of people also praying for bad things to happen to others, sadly.
I mean, so don't pray. Don't worry if your favorite team doesn't win the game because the other team has just as many fans.
Yeah, I love reading historical novels, and it's like watching both sides praying to God before they go off to battle. It's like, really? Kill in Jesus' name, both sides are saying. Okay.
Don't get me involved.
So then, go ahead, Kyle.
No, I was just nothing. Go ahead.
Okay. So then, as you're traveling around, you're kind of putting this team together. You mentioned your code of ethics. How does that tie into the local culture as well?
Our code of ethics is pretty basic. It's the Hippocratic Oath, but made for us. So it's things like, first, do no harm. If you're not there to help, you shouldn't be there at all. Do not abandon a case until you've passed it on to somebody who may be more knowledgeable than you if you can't handle it yourself. Things of that nature. It's common sense rules for helping your client and not harming them in any way. Don't be confrontational. I have used religious provocation on occasion, but it's rare. I find more often than not, mediation is a better tactic.
What do you mean by religious provocation?
On my very first case, my grandfather used it. And I couldn't understand why. Because when we entered the house, the whole friggin' house was shaking from the pounding on the walls and the clawing in the walls and these growling noises. And half the furniture had been removed from the home because it had been flying around. And my grandfather has me sit upstairs in the master bedroom in the dark after I'd just seen in the bathroom this upside down crucifix. I'm like, right out of Hollywood. And I'm afraid of the dark at 16 years old. I still at that point could not deal with my fear. And he has me sitting up there while they're downstairs using Holy Church incense and trying to say, by the power of Jesus Christ, we command you to show yourself. We command you to reveal yourself. But every time they tried to go up the stairs with the Holy Church incense, which was well lit, it would go out. By the end of the night, the woman had been clawed, 3 claw marks on her left cheek and blood dripping down on her chest. The pot with the church incense in it flew around the corner straight at my head and just missed me. 2 hulking black shapes came down the stairs staring at us. The lights started going on and off. The woman screaming she wants to run to the door and get out. And I'm like, good idea. So I run to the door and it won't open. The recliner I was just sitting in tumbles across the floor at me. And then the door opened by itself. Yeah, religious provocation is confrontational. And as far as I could tell at that point, we already saw what we were dealing with, we thought. We were dealing with something pretty heavy and negative. Did we really need to provoke it more?
Probably not.
Yeah, that's probably not something that's necessary.
But I'm sure there was reasoning for them to do it, right? I mean, they've been doing this quite a long time. Like,
I would imagine, but you got to remember too, they changed over the years. What you see in interviews from the 70s and 80s is not where they ended up. Those are snapshots in time. if you look at the early works of a great physicist or another theoretician, and then you look at their later work, you're going to see that they've changed and adapted as they got more evidence. My grandfather, in the early days, when I was growing up, he thought all rock and roll was satanic. He thought witchcraft was satanic. And he changed over time. He realized that he was incorrect. Still don't think he ever really liked rock and roll, but
I find it so hard to believe for some reason.
my grandmother loved old rock. Oh my God. The day she died, she and I spent the entire day, because I was with her that day. We spent the whole day singing her favorite songs. It was pretty cool.
That is cool.
As you guys have moved forward with the foundation and you are establishing yourselves globally, what are some of the biggest challenges that you face in setting up and training people?
Ego.
Tell me
Absolutely.
more.
Number one, right there, ego. People want to be attached to the Warren name. People join us. We're very careful, but even so, there are people who get in that probably shouldn't have, because it turns out, yeah, they have a great background and they appear to be wonderful. They've got great references, but they've got a massive ego. And when you've got a big ego, this is all about you. It's not about the client. That's not going to work. When your ego's overinflated, you're pushing God out of the room. So yeah, that's, to me, humility is important. This isn't about me. This isn't anything with me. I'm just there to help, but I'm not the one doing it. It's the client and God together. I'm just there to help.
How do you weed those people out by chance? It's usually probably too late. They're already there, and you're like, all right.
Oh, we let them go immediately. Let them go immediately. It happens, sadly, infrequently. Don't get me wrong. We don't have that many bad apples that have come and gone, but they do exist. We realize that, they'll start showing stuff on YouTube, and I see it, and I'm like, okay, you just brought a teddy bear that you claim has the spirit of a pedophile in it into a home where 2 children have been murdered, and you're using this SLS camera, which is that stick figure camera, to stir this thing up to see what it will do with these 2 children. Goodbye. You're no longer a member of the foundation. That's disgusting.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's horrible. To even think to do that, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, we've learned. I've got amazing directors, a management team of 3 fantastic managers who scour everybody's social media before they even get an interview. And we require background checks, and we're very, very careful now. Early on, I always want to see the best in everybody. And
well, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm the last line now. I'm not the first. I'm the 3rd guy that you come to for your last interview. And even with me, there are occasions where I'll just say, you know what? No, sorry, this isn't going to work.
Yeah. That just has to be the way it is and what you're doing, though.
Yeah. Well, it took me time to learn, because I'm not a manager. I've got a vision, but I'm not the guy who's making it happen. It's the foundation. I'm just one face out of many. We've got a YouTube channel called The Warren Files, where every other week now we put on a show. I'm not on it very much anymore, because it's important to me that we're representing other members of the foundation and letting them share their expertise. I've already done like 50 videos online on the Warren Files. So I'm like, let's have other people do this. I want the world to see that the foundation isn't just this guy, that there's a lot more out there, and that they're great people.
So are you still bringing people into the foundation?
Oh yeah, absolutely, all the time.
What kind of people?
I've got an interview tomorrow with a fellow in Great Britain.
Awesome. And what do you look for in a candidate?
Well, it depends. We want to look at their experience. We want to look at what they've done, what they do for a living. You know, are they a psychologist? Are they an engineer? What are they in their normal life? What brought them to us? We got a million questions, to be quite honest, but we're looking for their focus. What is it why are they doing this? What is their goal? You know, I'm looking for people who are there to help. You know, I don't like the paranormal. I don't. It doesn't interest me anymore. I know I'm not going to get more answers than I've got right now. Until we have a unified field theory in physics, I don't think we're going to be able to unlock some of these things. So I accept my ignorance. I'm only doing this because it needs to be done, and because I've got some experience after 43 years that can be helpful to truly help others. We just finished a possession case in Oklahoma. This poor girl, from the time she was 2 years old, has been abused and used in magic rituals and sexually abused some more. And she started manifesting the spirit at 16. Now she's 32, 33? And she's finally free. First time in her life. So, yeah, pretty happy about that one.
That's good. I mean, nice road to recovery for her now.
Yeah. Well, she's been getting the therapy she needs.
Yeah.
She's with a good church group who's very, very supportive. She's been basically adopted by this lovely lady who has taken her under her wing. She's gotten out of a very abusive relationship she had been with. It took a lot of months, maybe 6 or 7. My grandmother even showed up on this case and appeared standing right behind me during a video call with her and the team. And several of the people saw her standing behind me, and she's talking to the client saying, "Don't worry, dear, I'm here to help as well. We're going to be there for you." And one of my people, Tammy, she was like, "Look, I felt that energy. It felt right, but I have my doubts." So she was doing a spiritual cleansing that night using lavender and Epsom salts and other things in the bathtub. And my grandmother shows up to her, manifests physically, and says, "It's okay, dear. I know you don't know me, but I know you. I'm very proud of what you and the foundation are doing, and I'm here to protect you." And then she kissed her on the forehead, and she was gone.
Wow, that's a really sweet experience.
Yeah, my gram has appeared a number of times. We were having an online Christmas party a few years ago when I was in Scotland. I was sitting next to a wonderful medium. And all of a sudden, here I am talking about my grandparents and our Christmas holidays and how special they were. And all of a sudden, I just felt like, wow, like this warm feeling of my grandparents. And the medium looks at me and she said, "Yeah, they're here. Your grandmother just said, 'Christopher, we're here.'" I was like, "Yeah." My grandmother was the only one that ever called me Christopher. Yeah. And they showed up when I was working a case in Sanatorio de Ran, outside of San Jose, Costa Rica. And I was trying to help this little child to pass over. He had become stuck, but he was too afraid. And all of a sudden, I'm aware that my grandfather's standing off to my right side with his arms folded like, Chris, what the hell are you doing? And my grandmother comes in from the left, and she gets down on one knee, and she took the child by the hand without saying a word and just went into the light and was gone. That was a beautiful one. But they've shown up many times. It's nice. My grandparents and my grandmother's father as well. In my family, death is more of a suggestion. It's a bit of a revolving door.
All right, Kingdom of Nerds asked this question: how accurate is the portrayal of your grandparents in the movies? Since we're talking about them.
Yeah, well, the woman who plays my grandmother, Vera Farmiga, she got to really know my grandmother and loved my grandmother and respected her tremendously. I think she does a lovely job. I think Patrick Wilson is a terrific actor, but he never got to meet my grandfather, so he's only going by the videos he sees online, and they're not quite accurate. I don't see my grandparents when I see those movies. I see two great actors. They're both surreal for me. The details of those movies are definitely different, but the love was very real. Matter of fact, in The Conjuring 3, my favorite scene of all the movies ever was the last scene in the movie where my grandfather takes my grandmother out into the backyard, covering her eyes, and shows her a gazebo that he had made for her because she always wanted one. And I cried because my grandfather had actually done that for my grandmother.
Was it true that because that was part of, like in the movie, that was part of their first date? Was it raining and they ran under the gazebo?
Well, no. In their first meeting, it was World War II. They were 17 years old, and my grandmother had never had a date. And two of her girlfriends insisted that she go to the movies with them. And the usher who was there was my grandfather. And although there was an air raid and the movie was interrupted, after the movie, he had invited them out for a Coca-Cola, which was 5 cents. And my grandmother never drank Coca-Cola. So she ordered a milkshake, which was 15 cents. And my grandfather called her a gold digger till the day died. But that night, as he had said goodnight to the three young ladies, my grandmother didn't see this thin young man going across the street. She saw this heavy-set, middle-aged man, and she realized she was going to spend the rest of her life with him. A couple of months later, they were married. She was pregnant, and he was 17 and off to war in the Navy.
Wow.
And that was my mom's origin story.
So not like in the movie.
No. Actually, I don't remember that scene. I don't remember a first date scene.
All right. Well, I do, as we're kind of coming to the end of our time, I did want to bring everybody's attention to the Warren Legacy Foundation website.
Yep, that's warrenlegacy.com. And we have a contact us link on there where you can ask for help. And you can also apply to the foundation there. I just ask, please, if you're asking for help, fill that form out well so we do have some basis on which to start, so we get an idea of what you're actually dealing with. If you want to ask me a question, you can find me on Facebook, Chris McKinnell. I have 3 accounts on there: Chris McKinnell and the Warren Files, Chris McKinnell public one. But if you really want to get a hold of me, get a hold of my personal page, because that's the one I check most often.
Very good. I had a question come to me. We're running a little bit short on time, but I did have a question come to me, which was, you said that you don't really do the paranormal anymore because you got all the answers you were looking for.
Oh, no. Just the opposite. No, I do it. I help people constantly. I don't have all the answers. I just don't believe I'm ever going to get those answers.
I see.
I'm a student.
And the question that I thought of was the answers you were originally looking for. Were those the answers that you got?
No, I don't know. It's too big. To me, God is like an elephant that three blind men are touching different parts of. And we just get a small piece of it here and there. And I accept my ignorance now. Now my job is just to help people, which is something I've done my whole life.
Well, you certainly helped us today. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining us. Make sure everybody checks out the WarrenLegacyFoundation.com. If you need help, please contact Chris and do so using the methods on that website. You can also, if you like this content, please like, comment, and follow Thresholds of Reality so we can bring more stuff to you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. It was an honor.
Thank you so much. Until next time, keep on exploring the edges of the unknown.